Hello and welcome to History in Lowell with me, Maritza Grooms, and your favorite history professor, Robert Forrant. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Gordon Halm of the African Resource Center. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Excellent. So up until now, we've been talking about immigrant and refugee history in Lowell, specifically from the mid-19th century,
you got it.
up until like
I get confused.
up until now. And I know in recent years we've had a huge influx of African immigrants and refugees. So can you tell us about those populations and also what the African Resource Center is and what you guys do there?
Oh, sure. So the immigrants of Africans started to come to the Low area, greater Low area, as far as back as during the 1970s, when there weren't computer factories here in Lowell, and we had immigrants from Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria, and so on and so forth, being the first to come. But with the recent time, because of the political reasons, people have left their country against their will. So we have refugees that have come from Congo, from Somalia, Uganda, and so on and so forth.
Wow. So what would you say are the larger populations here in Lowell?
In terms of the refugees, you mean? Yeah. Well, in terms of the refugees, I would say the Congolese, because they have come in numbers. The recent arrival families that have come from Congo through the International Institute, which is a refugee resettlement, I would say the Congolese are the greater people that have come to the area.
Excellent, excellent.
So I know we did an oral history together a while back, and one of the reasons that a lot of people have ended up settling here, partly at least, is due to the fact that you've got Middlesex Community College and you've got the university. So I'm curious how much you think that as populations have settled, the various groups that you've already mentioned from the various countries, how much has the presence of the university affected those folks coming in terms of access to education, being able to find better work? Do you feel like people are taking advantage of the university in that way?
Sure. I mean, I am the living testimony because when I came through Maritza's Community College and UMass Lowell. But greater number of our population strive for education. But sometimes we have to work two, three jobs, so that makes it difficult. But I would say the majority of immigrants are ready to further the education, but sometimes the system and the living conditions come in a way, and it might take somebody. For instance, it took me about 10 years to complete my degree. Why? Because I was taking one classes per semester, because I have to work 2-3 jobs and provide food for the family and so on. Yes, so I think a lot of people are very passionate about education, but what we intend to do is that we focus on the children more. We feel that we need to push our children, so we make a lot of sacrifices, and we can forego our education and work 2-3 jobs and then invest in our children to get that education that we couldn't get.
And I would say that's definitely a similarity that we've seen across all of the groups that are coming into Lowell since the mid-19th century. Is always, I want to make a better life for the future generations coming after us. And would you say the children are taking advantage?
I would say yes. But we have few that are not taking the advantage of that. Due to the peer pressure. I mean, kids are kids, but we are very much involved in our children education. Every parent wants their children to succeed, but sometimes the pressure in this society makes some of the children, make wrong choices.
Right.
And then, but majority are focused to better themselves in education.
And it can be difficult to assimilate too when you're first generation here, or maybe you're younger coming over to America and having to resettle, and this is how you're growing up, but this is how your parents grew up. Do you see that dichotomy of maybe the young people are like, this is my culture though? Yeah.
I mean, we live with this every day. We tell them we don't do that in where we come from, right? So, but I think it's a time that we as a parents need to also take a step back and know that this is their generation, and this is something that we can work with them, because the training that we get from back home is you cannot apply it here, but it's a learning process, and we tend to make a lot of sacrifices in that, and also we also told them not to forget their roots.
Right.
So it's a struggle. It's a struggle with the children, and they go to school. It's a different situation, and they come home. It's a different. You have to abide by the rules. And so the kids are always caught in the middle. And but again, it's good for the parents to also work with them. And, to make good decisions.
So one of the things that we've talked about from back in some of the first shows we did is how different immigrant groups coming in over time settled in particular parts of the city. The Irish, for example, in the Acre, and then the Greeks in a part of the Acre, the French Canadians over around where North Campus is now of the university and such. Is there a particular part of the city where people from different African countries have settled, or are people pretty much spread out across the entirety of Lowell?
Yes, I would say we're pretty much spread out, but I feel that in Centerville is a place that you can see most of the immigrants that have
I know there's a good Kenyan restaurant over there near me.
Yeah, so, but pretty much we have scattered in, but again, Centerville, you'll see more of Africans, Kenyans, Ghanaians, Liberians, Sierra Leoneans, and so on and so forth.
The other thing, again, trying to think, as we've been doing this, we've been trying to compare and contrast as different groups of people come in over time. And one of the things that is a hallmark of immigrant groups as they come in, this is a little bit different because we're talking about several countries. It's not like everybody coming from Ireland or Greece or Portugal.
Right.
But within the range of people coming in, one of the first things lots of groups did is build some sort of a religious institution, some sort of whether it was a storefront church or eventually like the big St. Patrick's Church over in the Acre or French Canadian Church up on Merrimack or whatever it would be. Is that a pattern that various people have followed coming in from Africa too, from various countries?
Oh, sure. So I mean, I will just take our church for example, because I go to the Elliott Presbyterian Church, and we had a group of Kenyans that came to the Elliott Church, and they said that they are also Presbyterians, so they would like to worship with us. And it turns out that the parents didn't quite understand the English when services are being conducted in English. So what happened was that they advocated to have their different services where they could speak their native language. So we created a space for them in the church, and with time they outgrow the space, and now they have their own churches in the various community. Yeah, so people come and just based on the religion or maybe food, they may create their own churches or restaurant and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So if it's somewhat similar, then I'm struck by, again, as a historian, and thinking about immigration history more generally, as well as the specifics of Lowell, how many patterns are, I mean, there are obviously always going to be differences, but there are certain commonalities across time, and it makes me angry sometimes today when people who have an immigrant past, in a way, are now turning against or speaking out against contemporary immigrants and or refugees, when in their own background they had a similar life story to get here. Everybody came from, unless you're a Native American, everybody came from somewhere else.
Exactly.
And sometimes we tend to forget that and see the humanity right in all of us. So that as a history teacher and just as a human being, separate from being a history teacher, sometimes they're like what are we doing?
And even just like the various reasons that people come, we see like it's always a very specific to that culture, but generally it's some kind of political unrest or some upheaval, some kind of lack of resources. And that's what people need to understand, is that no matter what the law is, we need to understand that these are humans who need help or need resources and are just trying to provide for their kids, right, and their families.
So maybe talking about resources, I mean, and again, like we said earlier on, people come here for different reasons. Some people come here for medical, political reasons, but in majority, we all come to this country being that we heard the phrase, the promised land. So we feel that here is a promised land, land of opportunity. Don't get me wrong, it is a land of opportunity, but what we felt that here being the promised land, when we come here and we're faced with the reality, then it becomes a whole different ball game. And we realize that yes, you have to work very hard to make ends meet. And people are here, and you need to go to places to be connected to. We have people that are here and they are clueless about where they can go to get resources, and that's what the African Community Center is all about, to help families that have come to get the resources and the help that they most needed.
Yeah. So how do people hear about you? Is it through word of mouth when they come? Is it, this family came in and we might know someone, or maybe they're related and we can refer them?
Sure. So we have a website and through word of mouth as well. And so we're doing outreach. For example, I happened to meet a family, a mother and a daughter, a young adult, yesterday, and they were going to do a school registration. So I just say hello, and they are from Congo, just arrived, and they didn't know, they've been here for about 2 months, but they have no idea about what the African Community Center is. And so I said, well, we have a center here, would you mind coming with me to show you the space? And we walk upstairs, show them the space, and they were very thrilled, and we're able to also help them to get the support that they needed. So it's just word of mouth, and also in outreach. We are also doing a survey right now that Professor Forrant has helped us put together, and we are doing that to see where the needs are most needed. Where we can.
We're also doing a walking tour.
Oh yes, it's coming up September 8th.
Oh, good to know.
Whatever we're going to call it.
That's right. It's coming
Healthy
soon.
walking history.
Yeah.
Whatever we're gonna call it,
yeah.
Oh wow! Excellent.
So you brought some show and tells here that we want to make sure we have enough time to
Sure. So
talk about a little bit.
Right. So when we leave our home country, there are obviously things that we can come with, and there are some things that we cannot, like physical structures. We cannot bring out physical structures, but we have them we bring things mentally with us, and things that are very close to our hearts. So, for example, this is a traditional soup that we used. And I remember when I was in school, you know, when you take this to school and you use it, people tend to, laugh at you. But this is a very good soap. You know, it's good for the body, and just because it doesn't have that sort of fragrance like the palm olive or Dove, you know. Yeah. Yeah. So it's very, very, very good for the skin. We have, this is what we call gari. In some places they call it farina. It's made of cassava.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very popular in most of the African countries.
It's kind of like when you make it, it's almost like oatmeal. Is it, like,
Yes, you
close
can,
to-
right,
yeah.
you can make it like a
Like
oatmeal.
cream of wheat.
Cream
type
of wheat,
Yeah, that's
put
it.
sugar, milk, and then you can also make it like we call it like a rice ball.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I only know because of I know some Hispanic traditions they call it farina. Yeah.
Sure, yes, yeah. And this is fufu. Fufu is very also popular. We have the plantain, and so these are when we come here. These are some of the things that we sometimes missed. And if you are here and you don't know where the African stores are, the convenience stores are, and you will be like, dying to. Yeah. But we have about 4 different types of African stores in the Greater Lowell area that people could go there. And
Yeah, I know there's at least 2 in Centerville.
right,
And
yes.
there's a few in the acre.
Right,
Yeah.
and-
There's a few in the acre too.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah. And I brought with me a flyer, which is the Congolese.
Oh,
Yeah. So the African Community Center is helping the Congolese community to have their first annual flag raising at the City Hall, which is coming up tomorrow. So tomorrow the Congolese community is so excited, and they have invited, Congolese around the area. People will be coming from Lawrence, from Lane for this event. So we are very excited to have the first annual flag raising for the Congolese, and this is again the work of the center to connect, Africans and to be more involved with the community that they do, because the core values, one of the core values of the center is community engagement, and that's what we engage and help people. So we are very excited tomorrow.
So when you talk to people, right, when they first get here, like the family, that the mom and daughter that you talked to yesterday, or other groups of people as they come in, is there one perception that they have thinking they're coming to the United States that then when they get here, it's like, wow, that's not exactly what I thought it was going to? Is there something that's like, oh, this is not like what I thought?
And that could go either way. Right?
Yes,
Good or bad, yeah, either way, or one good, one bad, either way. Like, I'm just curious, like, what brings people up short, right?
Yes, right. Yeah, so like I said again, the promised land, and so families do really appreciate the opportunities this country has to offer for us, and I do greatly appreciate. I mean, this land, don't get me wrong, is, I would say, one of the best in the entire universe. Only if you are ready to accept and obey the laws and work hard for whatever the opportunities that are. Because some of these opportunities that we do have here, and I mean, honestly, I would say that we may not get it if we were back in our country. So people respect that. They respect opportunities this country has to offer for us. And but again, we come with the aim that probably money is on the trees that we can pull it out, and but you have to work hard. You have to pay the rent, right? The landlord will demand the rent at the end of the month, and so these are some of the some of the things that we feel like, oh wow, we have to work hard. And
yeah, and again, see, there's a striking similarity. My grandparents on my mom's side came from Italy, and I always remember my grandfather telling me that he came thinking he had been recruited to come, and there were posters in Italy that showed these trees with dollar bills hanging off the tree at the various ports where people would get a ship to come. And he said in a naive kind of a way, I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it actually was. And when I got here, he said, I looked around for the money tree.
You can't find it.
And he said, I'm still, this was, when I was a little bit older, and he said, I'm still looking for the,
I know, right?
I'm still looking for the money tree.
Money tree.
And there are all these proverbs about, again, in sort of an Italian tradition, which is sort of the one I'm closest to, of people coming in and hearing that the streets were paved with gold. And then the sort of immigrant story is, when I got here, I thought the streets were paved with gold. I realized they weren't, and then I realized I was going to be paving the streets. That was my job, right?
That's right.
And so I guess in a metaphorical way, yeah, the streets were paved with gold in an odd way, right? Because it was the labor and your wages from paving the streets, but it wasn't. But people did think almost like there was going to be money, like
Definitely.
laying on the ground, right? What about the weather?
Yeah.
I'm always
Oh.
curious, like when people come
How
from
much of a
places
shock
that
is that? Because I feel like even for us as New Englanders, it's still a shock for us. We're
Yeah.
never prepared.
Well, so with summer, which is very similar conditions that we have back in our countries, but when you talk about winter, boy, it's cold. It's cold,
Yeah.
and people have come here, and when they see their first snow, it's like, oh, I mean, yeah. So with weather, we appreciate the weather, but the winter, at least sometimes it could be a little bit warmer. Would be good. Yeah, but thankfully we have the jacket, we have the clothing that we can, but what we talked about, earlier on in terms of, and I'm going to give you a scenario talking about culture shock, okay? And it was a winter time. The weather was extremely cold. Snow fell like a foot of snow, something like that. And we were living on Centerville at the time, so we had a minivan, and I took my children to McDonald's just to buy them which they don't, eat it often, but once in a while. So it was just a treat. I took them, and we were coming on Centerville. I was making a right to West 6th Street, which is where, and there was a group of kids. There were about maybe 20 of them standing at the corner of between West 6th and, where I was standing. Group, I would say like 6 years to maybe 14 years. And as soon as I turned right, I could hear snowballs, right? They threw the snowballs on my window. Oh my God! I almost lost control, right? And I was like, why? So I just pulled off, right? And then, right in Africa, if I had pulled out, right, and then for them to see me coming, they will all run away. So when I put off, my kids were like shaking in the car. Guess what happened? They came at me, and they were like, "What you gonna do? What you gonna do?" I was like, "Oh my, little kids." They came and, "What you gonna do? What you gonna do?" I mean,
Yeah.
and to me, that day, we talk about culture shock. Because in my country, those kids will run, they will all disperse. But here, they came at me, they're throwing, "What you gonna do?" So these are some of the things that, we have to deal with, and the culture shock, because of, discipline-wise. Oh, in Africa, if I have pulled out, everybody will be, you will not see a single soul there. But here, they came at me, "What you gonna do?"
Different rhythms, different routines.
I know, right?
Yeah. So one of the things, we've talked about this before, but one of the things I find interesting is that lots of the people who have come from, say, Cameroon or Ghana or Kenya or wherever, have in their place of origin completed a university degree, have a degree in maybe a doctor, maybe a nurse, maybe an accountant, all these things, right? But when they get here, are there obstacles to them being able to then easily assume those positions and find that work when they get to Greater Lowell, let's say?
Oh yes, I mean, so obviously the degree being a physician, when they get here, they have to retake the exams and be certified through the board. So the struggle that most of them do have is again about job, having to pay their rent and the family. Most of them do come with their families, so it becomes a struggle initial, for them to sort of dive in and practice, as a medical doctor. They have to recertify, to get the certification. So you see a medical doctor who is doing like a CNA job, or who is doing housekeeping, just to survive, for those maybe a couple of years. And again, it depends. Somebody might do it for a very long time because there's no support system. Right. And somebody might do it maybe 2 years just to get, the certification and then be certified. Yeah, so it's a lot of sacrifices. You could be an engineer and you work in McDonald's and so on and so forth. Yeah.
I met someone who was, she had a medical degree in her country of origin. I can't remember where she was from, but she worked at Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And she was putting her daughter through school, though. Sure. So her daughter was at UML, which is great, studying to be an engineer. Right. So that was great, but those sacrifices.
Sacrifices.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty nosy, right? When I get in taxi cabs, I like talking to who's ever driving me. I don't like to Uber because I feel like, taxi drivers are the working class that I relate to, right? So, but I'll always ask people, because usually if I get in a cab, it can be obvious somebody's not from here originally.
Yes.
And I'll usually talk to them about where they came from, what they did before they got here, that type of thing. And sometimes when I'm in Boston, I feel like Boston has the best educated cab drivers in the world, because almost every time I get in, it's an engineer or a doctor or, maybe a college professor where they were before or whatever it would be. And so I mean, it's another thing I think we don't necessarily think about when we're thinking about the impact, the importance of immigration on skills in the workforce and all the rest.
And
so people do bring, bring a bundle of stuff with them that can contribute if we make the space to let that happen.
That's right.
Right. And I would say for sure that the African community has certainly made Lowell a much richer and vibrant place, which is usually what immigrant communities do when they come here. There are vestiges of everything. You see the food, the culture, and the African festival, which is excellent that we have that. So I just want to thank you, Gordon, for coming on the show and giving us a little snippet into, because I feel like when we're talking about the African community, it's so large and broad, and there are so many different countries that we can't go into each one.
No,
we can do more shows.
Yes,
yes, definitely, sure. Yeah.
So thank you so much for
You're
coming
welcome.
on, and thank all of you for tuning in. And I hope that you remember it's all about community.
That's right.
Say hello.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.